Yeah.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. Our session is titled What Marks the Era of Long-Term Vision Capitalism? It's powered by Softbank Vision Fund. I'm your moderator. My name is Hojeij. I am business news anchor with Asharq with Bloomberg News. And I would like to welcome our amazing guests, starting with Mohamad, the co-founder and CEO of Kitopi, Cloud Kitchen. Ethan Lind, co-founder and CEO of Kook, tourism industry. Rebecca Minghella, founder and CEO of Clarity, financial. And of course, Saleh Hojeij, advisor for SoftBank Vision Fund and managing partner at Safanad. Welcome all. Beginning, I will start with you, Saleh, initially. I have to do that because I want you to explain to us what is vision capitalism and what is the difference between that type of investment and what we are used to, which is the VCs, the venture capitals.
Yeah, thank you, and hello everybody. I'm going to try and speak loud. Can everybody hear me in the back? I'll try to, the acoustics aren't very good here. But when we speak of what you called vision capitalism, I think the key word is vision, right? Because everything begins with a vision, and that's not as obvious as it is, right? So I have the good fortune of having spent 7 years in the SoftBank Vision Fund. It's led by Masayoshi Son, who is one of the world's great visionaries. So I got to learn that everything begins with a vision. I'm also now a managing partner at Safanad. Safanad is a company, is an investment company that began in 2009. We've deployed $10 billion into 4 sectors. This is going to be important, so I want you to remember this. Education, data centers, healthcare, and real estate. So the founder of Safanad is a gentleman called Kamal Bahamdan. He had the vision, back in 2009 to start those businesses. Why? Because he said, what are going to have tailwinds? What are businesses that are, and sectors that are going to grow over time? And today, all of them education, digital infrastructure, healthcare in the kingdom are important. So everything begins with a vision, Maya. Everything begins with a vision, but it doesn't end there, right? From vision, you need to create a strategy, right? And I see some of my colleagues and some of the people from our portfolio companies here. Everybody knows that you have to have the right strategy to execute that vision. So the Vision Fund, for example, was created to form a strategy around Masa's vision of AI, which he had for a long time, which is being borne out only today. People are starting to see what that vision is starting to bear fruit. It doesn't just end with strategy. The next step is you have to execute that strategy. So you have to have the people to execute that strategy, right? So to come back to your question, when you talk of vision capitalism, it's about forming that connectivity between vision, strategy, execution, right? When I talk to Rebecca, for example, I'm always like, look, you've been one of the great visionaries, Rebecca. Where are you on execution? Okay. So it's very important to form that connectivity and to see everything bear fruit. Equally, myself, I joined Safanad because while the vision has been there, we need to reformulate a strategy that matches that vision, especially given the importance of the kingdom in the world's economy and the world stage today, and then to help execute that strategy. If you have the best vision, it doesn't matter if you have the best vision if you don't have the right strategy and you can't execute. And that's something that, when I'm on Mo's board, I know everything that goes on at Kook. Rebecca, she and I communicate regularly, and I'm always telling them, right, where's the execution? They're all visionaries. They're all incredible visionaries.
What makes Kitopi something that's worth being a vision, something that to be approached by vision capitalism?
So what Kitopi is we're a tech-powered multi-brand restaurant. And if you think about the traditional restaurant industry, they struggle with 2 key big risks for success. First one is finding the right location and making sure that that location of their restaurant survives the next 5 to 10 years. And most of the time, it doesn't survive as locations move. The second big risk in the restaurant industry is content. The brand that you own, the restaurant brand that you own, suddenly becomes a fad, it changes, and no longer is as popular. So what Kitopi wanted to do is really shift that by building an agile infrastructure and agile content. And think of us like a food publishing house. And this is what we went and pitched out to Softbank and others, saying we want to really change and disrupt how the traditional restaurant industry has been operating in the past hundreds of years.
So how have you disrupted so far?
So it's both agile infrastructures, the fact that we were able to, in a very small space, have multiple brands operate in a single spot, and make sure that the way we operate is in a very agile way, right? So whether it's on automation or the way we connect our supply chain, both on the efficiency side and on the content, the brand side, making sure that you adapt to customer needs, as the years go by.
Saleh was speaking a minute ago about AI and the importance of AI and how it has developed and it has brought us in. So AI transitions into the mainstream now, and I would move to ask you, Rebecca, what makes your model cater to transformative technologies in the financial industry? How are you making that change?
Yeah, so basically what we do at Clarity AI, we have a software as a service platform leveraging artificial intelligence to bring capabilities to mainly asset managers and asset owners who want to integrate sustainability assessment into their investment strategies. At the moment, our capabilities are integrated in financial platforms and asset managers and asset owners covering more than $60 trillion of assets under management. So if you think about it, once those networks start actually using the sustainability assessment, because they have those capabilities integrated but not necessarily investing according to those parameters, that can have a huge impact, social and environmental impact in how you manage those assets, right?
Okay, and Ethan, how does AI cater to you? You're in the tourism business. How does it help you scale that business? How does it make it more scalable?
Well, first of all, Kook is in a very interesting space of experiences.
Can everybody hear back there, by the way?
Just checking. All good? All right.
I'm the sound.
Yeah. So there are millions of mom and pop shop and millions of things to do. So it's a vast majority of things that people can experience in day-to-day life when they go travel. So in this concept, and together with close to 100 millions of users that we have and serve, how are you making them to have the perfect match? Because in this digital world, everyone only have their phone with this size of screen, right? So one application for AI has been the discriminative AI, even before the Gen AI, which I will touch in a bit. So discriminative AI has been really able to predict the user profile and what's the user preference, and really matching with the data that it becomes a much more personalized journey when they're looking for things to do. So the more and more people using the app, the more and more it tailored to the things that that person is interested to explore in their destinations. The Gen AI, which is the hot topic this year, or since last year, it has a real application in terms of scaling up the operation, which actually saves costs in a dramatic way. There have been 3 front of application that we are doing. First is the digital concierge, which we already do the beta testing. We launched in 7 of the Asian language, which basically anyone can ask our Kai, which is our digital concierge, to help them to plan an itinerary, to explore the destination, getting all the information, summarize it in a very nice way, just like how you go to a hotel concierge desk. The second thing is the localization. So we used to have we serve around 15 different languages across Asia Pacific. So we used to have close to 100 people of what we call the localization team, the translators.
Okay.
Right now, that team has been trained down to 20 people. They become content manager. So the OpenAI has been already integrated into the infrastructure that any publishing by any language in a market, say Japan. So anything published in the Japanese language has been in sync to be available in another 15 language. Right? And last on this is really scaling up the customer service. Right, so now we are able to increase around 50% of the efficiency in that.
The AI helps with
The
that.
AI, yes.
Scaling the customer service.
Because of the data that they are actually able to summarizing the pain point
Okay.
and supporting needed for the customer service agent for the interaction with the consumers.
So let me, if I may
Yes.
just
Please.
add to what you just said. Here's something for everyone to remember, right? Who speaks French in the audience? Anybody speak French? Okay, so food processor. What's the French word for a food processor? Robot, right? They call it a robot. When it first made its appearance in kitchens, what did it do? It freed up the sous chef from the hours, anyone who's cooked knows this, the hours of slicing and dicing that it takes. That sous chef could delegate chopping to the robot, it's called a robot, and could focus on the more creative sides of cooking, presentation,
Okay.
trying out new dishes, and scaling the kitchen. It's interesting, right? So I think AI has exactly the same function. It's just going to replace the menial tasks, and that's one of Masa's visions. Masa, I remember him saying to me 7 years ago, said that humans were not brought to this earth to do menial tasks.
Oh, wow.
It's almost a tragedy to see the human mind being wasted on repetitive, menial tasks. We are the most creative beings, and we've been granted this incredible mind. So, what you've just described, I relate it to something simple that we take for granted, and we do not fear that. Nobody fears a food processor in the kitchen other than cutting your fingers in the kitchen.
But then that's all. Yeah, yes, please, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think there are those fears, but it's also a lot of big markets that are at risk, right, of incumbent players in the market that we are in which most of the financial industry relies on analysts, right, to do their job, or consultants. They believe the artificial intelligence algorithms are not transparent, and they say, well, it's a black box, but at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is just defending those super large businesses of consulting and analysts that are billions of dollars today, right?
I mean, the irony is that humans are the most adaptable creatures in the world, but we resist change. I mean, it's ironic, right?
Until we have to. Which is what happened during COVID.
Correct.
But when we look, I mean, we discussed AI, but let's talk about and how it affects your businesses. But Saleh, let me ask you, when you look at these, when you are evaluating the investments themselves, our three guests have different revenue streams, different revenue models. So what makes you think this is a long-term project? This is something that we can invest in that is going to take us to the next level?
Yeah, very good question. So let me answer on behalf of Safanad and Softbank. Two very different platforms, but both share very common themes, right? In the case of the Vision Fund, right, everything begins with buying into the founder's vision, right? And we've done it with each of them, right? It begins with that. But to get to where we're trying to get to, it has to follow through the vision, the strategy, execution. The execution part's very important, right? So our job, Masa's job in the Vision Fund was to spot the entrepreneurs. Our job is to help these companies scale up and do the right things. At Safanad, we don't have as many companies. We only focus on 4 sectors. We're owner-operators. We built these companies from day one with our capital. So, of course, we're incented to help each of these companies grow. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we get involved with the companies, just like we do with them. We help them hire staff. We help them develop a strategy.
Financial planning?
Yes, but it doesn't just end with financial planning. You have to be a sponsor, of course, but you have to be a manager. And being a manager has been lost in the velocity that PE firms look for. Okay. Right? PE firms are just looking to make an investment, apply financial engineering, get it out the door. That goes against the ethos of what we're trying to do. Right? At Safanad, We are long-term capital, so we try to work with the companies throughout their cycle. And that's very important. So each of them will be able to attest. I think 3 days ago I spoke to Rebecca about what do we do about your business? How can I help? Me, myself. How can my team members help? In the case of Mo, we spent the morning strategizing. So these are things that, owner-operators and the asset managers have to get involved in, because otherwise the model is broken. Okay. The days of fast money are gone.
Mo, how would you make Saleh see your vision, or any fund that's interested?
So around 2.5 years ago, we wanted to raise around $700 million because we were about to reiterate in our model, and we had to go from licensing content brands to buying the brands, be able to really scale and unlock that vision. And I remember, when I went to Saleh and Saleh's team, and then eventually Masa. This was a big, bold thing. We're trying to paint a picture of where the next 10 to 20 years is, how the whole restaurant industry is progressing, the size of the problem and how it's getting even bigger, and how to convince them that that's a problem that we're solving, and doing it all while completely evolving our model to go after that larger problem.
Do you have restaurants or kitchens that are in and out from under your umbrella, from the model itself? And then how do you replace them?
So I think the concept of agility means that, think of, how Netflix runs content. There's always going to be content that is relevant today, it's interesting today, and then, some content lasts 5 to 10 years, some brands, die out in a year. The whole idea is building this agile infrastructure for us to replace brands depending on adapting to consumer needs.
You can ask Rebecca.
Rebecca, yeah.
When we speak, what am I always harping on about? What am I trying to help you with?
Sales. Yeah, that was my next question. How can you grow? With financial services, people are afraid. They fear. This is something new, like Saleh just said. How do you scale? How do you grow? How do you sell?
Yeah, so I believe that Saleh is exactly right, that it's important to understand the founder's vision, but it's important to keep them focused on the execution and on the right areas of the execution. At Clarity, I have a tech background, and I'm very focused on the product side of it, so the algorithms and having the best product, but at the end of the day, it's as important as having a great sales team, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to get the word out. But it's also important, to Saleh's point, that the investors trust the entrepreneur, right? Because there are so many things that can happen. And sometimes, I'm sure you have also been in those places in which you have your investors who might have talked to you like 2 hours every quarter, trying to tell you that they know better than you what to do, right? When they might not know the nuances. So it's that balance between giving you the right advice based on your experience and what you see in other companies, versus also trusting the entrepreneurs and the teams that they have behind them that can execute that vision, really, right?
Well, one of the questions I ask you is, how is our board member doing, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I want to make sure that the board member is doing well.
Exactly, that they are really adding value.
Two-way relationship. How do you build that relationship at
Softbank? Yes. Well, Softbank is very, two things, right? One, the vision part. I think that's very important because you need to know what are the right things to do for the longer term.
Okay.
Right? That should not change. So I think since day one when Kook was funded, and also since the first time we met Masa, travel is an industry will always be there, will always growing. But how can you disrupt it, right? So hence for us, travel is not just going to another city, going to another destination. It's how you embrace a new culture, how you forge connections, and how you're really creating a lifetime memories that when you travel. So a lot of this actually built into the product that what we do, and then how tech actually going to help to transform. And then when you know what's the right things to do, then are you doing the right things? Which is what has been mentioned earlier, the execution part. Right? So Softbank also has been very helpful. On the quarterly basis, we actually sit down to really discuss a lot of operational matters. Right? Are we scaling? What are we done with execution? Mm-hmm. Are the metrics moving? Right? Unfortunately for the travel industry, we just come out from COVID last year. Right? We are fortunate to, with this year's growth.
You survived. You
We
survived.
not just survive, we are three
During
times
COVID.
bigger in 2019. We
There you
survived
go.
through COVID.
Yeah.
We are 3 times bigger in 2019, where we are become profitable, and we have a huge balance sheet, and now we can even expanding much more.
So
and
you've
a lot of
become
operation
profitable
things.
due to the partnerships? How much did the partnerships help in becoming profitable?
Well, the partnership with Softbank has always been the discipline.
Okay.
Right. So throughout the COVID, right, I mean, we really sit down to mapping out
Okay.
where in the company should you stay focused, right? Where you have to make the tough decisions, right? As a matter of fact, in 2020, we actually let go of 40 to 50% of the workforce,
Okay.
right? And now, but as a result, right now we are running 20% leaner of the team compared to 2019, but at 3 times bigger of the business size.
And just to cap that off, I mean, at Safanad, we spend, it's a partnership, 5 managing partners. We spend so much time working with our portfolio companies and the CEOs of the portfolio companies, right? We help them on raising capital. We help them on hiring people. We help them on developing a strategy. We help them on defining the right metrics to measure performance. We help them on aligning strategy. There's a lot of things that you need to do as an asset manager in order to make sure that there isn't a disconnect between investors and the companies. Really, that's our job, right? Is to provide that medium, right?
So as you provide that medium to each of your portfolio companies separately, how do you get them to collaborate, or do you actually try to foster collaboration and knowledge sharing between different companies in your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things we did in the Vision Fund was to create what we call an ecosystem, right? And the ecosystem, I mean, that term's used quite frequently, but in the Vision Fund, it's an ecosystem of 450 companies.
Okay.
What that means is that within our network, either portfolio companies can find suppliers, customers, or counterparts cross-border to exchange information with, or within our network, we can connect them to our bankers, we can connect them to governments, we can connect them to the consumer market. So in Softbank, just because of the scale, we're present in the US, we're present in Europe, in Asia, in Japan. We help all of these companies grow. And with respect to the kingdom, I think all 3 of you have grown successfully in the kingdom, partly through their own efforts, but partly through the efforts of our connectivity here in the kingdom, right? So that's a very important part of the ecosystem that we create. The other thing that we create, again, the parallel with Safanad, is the knowledge that and the connectivity that the 5 managing partners have is a very big network of people. That's our job, to connect our operating companies, our CEOs, to that network, right? It's hugely powerful when you have 5 people who have each 30 years experience to be able to connect them to our networks. So that's something where we spend a huge amount of time on.
I think Rebecca and Ethan had something to add.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that, because we have an office here in Riyadh, so we see a huge opportunity in the kingdom. We have signed an agreement with the Minister of Economy and Planning, an MOU with Tadawul, with the stock exchange. So, and of course, Softbank has been a great supporter on us doing that. And of course, the ecosystems are super important for every investor to try to proactively connect the companies of their portfolio. We signed our first agreement for our consumer product with Klarna, thanks to the connections among portfolio companies as well. So it's super important to try to catalyze those ecosystems too.
So Saleh is also a Saudi now, so he's been a Saudi for a year, so he's more connected maybe in the region.
For those of you in your audience who are wondering, that's exactly right. I was granted citizenship, thankfully, a year ago, yes.
Ethan.
Yeah, I was just about to share 2 examples how we're actually benefiting from that ecosystem. So first, in Saudi, with Vision Fund's help, we actually formed the JV with the largest online travel agents in Saudi. that to really bring in the technologies to digitizing the infrastructure of the ticketing services, as well as to co-help together, working with the kingdom for the tourism promotions. And the second, I mean, we definitely benefit even more because Softbank from Japan, right? Japan is the largest inbound destination, the most traveled tourist places in Asia right now.
Okay.
You can go there every
Cheap
single
yen
season.
helps.
Yes. Yes, it's amazing, right? You can go ski in the winter, you can go see the autumn leaf, you can go summer hiking. It's amazing. It's the largest destination for us. And with SoftBank's reputation in both Japan and Korea, especially in Japan, Japan is a market that you need a long-term relationship to really break in. And they give us a lot of credibilities when we start forming a partnership with a larger company like Disney in Japan, the Universal Studio, the Japanese Tourism Board, many of the real estate companies.
Yes. You're catering for this region in Asia, or you want to do a two-way thing? You want to cater also within the region?
Okay, so for Saudis, a lot of, for the global supply and services, providing to the Saudi as a region.
Okay.
And also for the global visitors visiting Saudi, for the infrastructure to be digitized. Okay, so that's for Saudi. For Japan, is actually one of our largest travel market right now.
Okay.
So that's just tailored to the global visitors. And it's booming for this year. So if anyone want to go to Japan this year, do book in advance. All the supplies running out.
Or talk to Ethan after the session,
Yeah.
And he'll help you. You don't want to introduce your
That's for
platform?
sure, yes.
Yeah.
Or just go Google, go Apple Store search group.
Don't say that. We're talking about.
There you
aren't
go.
we,
There you go.
Sarah?
Yeah. Bump
Shouldn't
up
you be doing
sales.
that?
Yes,
Bump up
that's very
sales.
important.
So how do you bump up sales, Mo?
So, big question, right? So I think if you're going to kind of go back on how does SoftBank help drive that,
Yes.
since we are making SoftBank feel special today.
No, you don't have to. We're trying to
I think
make you
everyone's
feel
here,
special.
so we're going to continue the roadshow. So no, I think it's been. I think for us, we don't really see SoftBank as probably what a lot of people see in the news. I think we see the individuals behind it, right? And this is what matters. It's the the guys that sit on our board. The access we get to the entire network has been amazing. A very powerful investor. But beyond that, what I always tell my board and my shareholders is they got to make one decision a year. Do they want to keep me or remove me? And every other decision is mine. And what I really need is access, support, ideas, and they've been amazing in facilitating that, right? So, our relationship is not that of a traditional investor and portfolio company. It's really much more deep-rooted as a real partner. So, and that's what we value in it.
I mean, we don't. I think we're. Again, I don't want to keep saying this, but both in the SoftBank Vision Fund and at Safanad, we're patient investors. So we're not, banging our fist on the table at the board meeting saying, hey, when's the exit? When's the exit, right?
Okay.
Our first question is, how can we help you? Literally. Like when I call Rebecca or when I call Mo, Mo, I like to give him a hard time a bit, but when I call Rebecca, she's overworked, poor thing. So I'm always like, Rebecca, how can I help you? How can we help you? And that's the type of relationship we look for. And likewise at Safanad, it's the same thing. It's a permanent capital vehicle, so we're not looking to get out of our investments. We understand that our LPs and our investors at the portco level need to cycle out, but we have ways to engineer that, right? But the most important thing is to stay patient so that the founders and the CEOs know that they have help, because it's very lonely at the top for these guys, and for the CEOs of our operating companies at Safanad. It can be lonely. So we always make sure that they feel supported. The conversation I have with my partners at Safanad is, have you called Ron Packard, the CEO of our education business? I'm like, I forgot to call him. Let me call him. That's the kind of interaction and the proximity. Because if you can create that connectivity, then you just have to focus on looking after your investors, which is a whole different subject, but equally important, and then we can focus our efforts there.
So let me ask our startups who are now a bit bigger than startups at the moment, they're beyond that. When did you know that this is a long-term thing? You have actually crossed that line, you have made it into long-term. Let me start with you, Mo.
So I think if kind of how you think of evolving from, I mean, you can't stay a startup forever, right? It's
Yeah.
what defines your evolution from a startup to a scale-up. It's if you look at it across any dimension you want to think of, right? When in the era of like growth at any cost was over, it's like how healthy is your bottom line? What's your customer experience look like? What's your team look like? What's your compliance look like? And the kind of discussions we have internally are more of like how predictable is your business and how sustainable is it versus just the first era, which is like proving that this can actually exist for long. And I think we've gotten there, right? We've gotten there with that discipline in mind.
Ethan, when do you know?
Day one.
You knew from day one. That's
Well,
nice.
it has to be long-term from day one, right? I mean, I quit my job. I used to be in IBD, investment bank.
Okay.
I was a first year VP.
There's nothing wrong with investment banking.
Oh,
here.
yeah, well, true, yes. Life does
It's a
get
great
bored when you
school.
become
It's a great
VP.
school.
You have an MD sourcing the deal, you have an analyst associate working on the execution.
Absolutely.
Life getting a bit boring, as a VP. But anyway, put that aside. I think since day one,
Okay.
right, when you want to do something, I'm looking at my parents' generation. They are first-time entrepreneur. I mean, they build things. Whenever they want to do something, the first question is you need to be fully committed, right? And with that full commitment, that is already a long-term things that you are very committed to deliver. Yeah.
Rebecca,
Yeah, I agree with him as well that you have to believe in the vision from day one, of course, but you start seeing if that's going to be really a company to stay for the long term. If you keep hitting the targets and, of course, usage, right? Like your clients use your services and you keep covering the need that the market might have or even creating a need. In some cases, we are actually creating new markets, right?
But the biggest issues, I think they're all long-term thinkers.
okay,
The issue is that investors
okay.
are not
So that was
long-term.
my question to you. How did you know, or when did you know that this was long-term with any kind of partnership?
Well, I think as an asset manager, and I think the whole asset management industry, and I speak generally for PE firms and other type of firms, is that the most difficult task is sort of connecting the disconnect between the long-term need for capital and the long-term need for strategies to play out with the inherently short-term nature of investors, right? I'll give you one statistic that will surprise you. Here's a trivia question. Take Tesla. Peak in 2021, trough to 2022. How much destruction of value, how much loss of value do you think there was?
50.
Anybody want to venture a guess? $900 billion of value gone within a 12-month period. I'll just let that sink in for a second. Almost $1 trillion of value dissipated in one stock in 1 year. So how do you ask investors, and I'm using the term generally, but to be patient around that? Clearly there's impatience, right? And I think our role, whether it's in the Vision Fund or at Safanad, is to close that gap. At the Vision Fund, we're very fortunate because our LPs are strategic.
Okay.
We're very grateful to have the PIF, Mubadala, and other investors, and they're all very strategic. But if you're an asset manager and if you're a PE firm, you have the inherent challenge of having to manage the angst and the short-term focus of investors with the need to make sure that the portcos and that the operating companies are given runway to develop, right? And that's the most important thing. And the way you close that gap is by creating trust. If your investors trust the manager, the investors will start to understand what you're trying to do. You can't just tell investors, look, be long-term, be patient, because inherently they're not, right? But if you can build trust by doing the right things, creating transparency, by creating communication lines, by giving them chances to monetize periodically, and if you do the things that investors need, then you can create that trust, and by creating trust, you break that, you start to connect that disconnect that exists between the long-term need for capital and the short-term nature of end investors. That's what you have to do.
Before I move on to my next question, I want to see if anyone has a question in the audience. Anyone like to ask any of our guests or our investor? No questions?
Well, you've done such a great job that people don't need to ask questions.
Let's go back to you, Mo. When you look at where you are today, how important is it to grow beyond borders? And when you look forward and you look long term, what markets would you target moving forward?
So I think we had a lot of lessons learned in our journey where we expanded in the first 18 months of our existence as a company to 3 continents, which I wouldn't wish upon anyone to do. And we realized that you have to kind of earn the right to grow, right? Earn the right to need to expand. And if you really start questioning why does a company need to extend beyond its borders or a few borders, it's typically if your TAM, if your growth potential is limited. And in our case, in the GCC, it's one of the best parts of the world to operate in, where you have relative, high purchasing power, low fulfillment cost, and so we can grow 10x from where we are now without the need to expand outside. So our view is to double down in one of the most exciting regions in the world to invest in.
Rebecca will talk about a new financial crisis. Recession, no recession. Are we there? Are we not there? And you want to scale, you want to grow with financial services. How do you handle it? How are you going to move forward? How are you going to maintain the vision forward, the long term? How is it going to happen?
I think it's important what Saleh also just mentioned of partnering with the right partners and the right stakeholders, in the sense of your team has to have that long-term vision to see that the crisis is going to end, for example, right? That is, and try to look at the opportunities during that crisis as much as possible, and have that vision of let's go through this crisis, and then there is a way out, and also partners in terms of clients as well, right? That remain loyal to the company as well through that crisis.
So Saleh did mention that he was pushing you to scale, and he was saying that people are resistant to change initially, Rebecca. When you say financial advising through, or helping with your finances through a platform, through a company, are you competing with banks? Are you providing, or with investment banks? And when it comes to that, how are you convincing these people that yes, we are here to stay, we will withstand the financial crisis if it does happen or not, and we are strong to remain?
Well, the financial industry, I guess, is one of the most difficult ones to get in as a startup, because they are risk averse by definition. So it's complicated. So that's why partner is so important. We partner with large established brands, right? Like BlackRock, like Deutsche Börse. So we try to partner as much as possible with good logos, so we could have a reputation and a brand in the space, because otherwise it's very difficult to make it, of course.
Ethan, for you, it's a commission-based model in general. So how do you maintain profitability and you look forward and you really stick to the long term?
Yeah. Well, as a platform business, profitability comes with scale. So we are hitting around 3 billion sales mark this year as annual sales. So that actually giving us the very good comfort level of the profitabilities. As we continue to scale, there is a big leverage in operation, right? AI also play a very big part, that some of the operational costs will go even lower, right? In the past, it just doesn't move as exponentially as how the revenue go, but now it's even coming down as your further scale.
Okay.
And on the revenue side, there are 2 fronts that we haven't even started. We have around 60 to 70 million monthly traffic. We haven't even monetized based on advertising model, because we do think that can even add on at even larger scale, but we don't need that revenue stream at the moment, but that can be adding on top in the later stage. And the predictive AI, the discriminative AI is helping to improve the cross-sell and also the pricing power of each of the consumers, as it's able to better predict each of the user profiling. Right, so again, the more users use the app, the more it matching with the user's profile of things they are interested of doing when they go travel. So we do think that's going to continue to accelerating.
So when we look at these things, Saleh, we have to talk about resilience. And where does, you did say that you are really involved, you speak to them, you talk to them. How do you nurture resilience within these companies? How do you help them to become resilient?
Well, I mean, let me put things into context. In today's world, right, where interest rates are now, well above zero, right? They keep rising. The long end of the interest rate curve is rising. Money is not free anymore. Capital has become scarce, right? Capital is their oxygen. So you have to make sure that you can provide them with the oxygen they need when they need it, right? I think in the past, when interest rates were zero, which meant money was free, there was no price to that. There was no opportunity cost to the allocation of capital. So it was very easy to supply them with oxygen, right? Today, you have to be much more judicious in how you provide that oxygen. So what you need to make sure is that, again, I go back to my notion of, vision, strategy, execution. Provided you have the right vision underpinning the right strategy, and you have a team that can execute, you can provide them with the oxygen, right? And at Safanad, that's the most important thing that we provide to our operating companies, right? Is the oxygen for them to operate. So the 5 partners that are involved in the investment company, our main job really is to help provide oxygen in the form of capital to our portfolio companies. So, today that becomes very, very difficult. They know you've raised capital many times. Raising capital 4 years ago, 3 years ago, even as recently as a couple of years ago is a very different game to doing now, right? So I think it's very important to support the companies that way.
So from what you just said, I would like to ask all of you, what has changed between yesterday and today? What is the difference in the market when you look at the market now?
That's one thing. That's one thing we.
Can't hear you.
Yeah.
The mic is off. You want to go, Rebecca?
No.
Yeah. Go first. I'll go after you. My mic's working. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing we reflect on quite a lot. Is what are investors looking for? Especially, we're probably like T-minus 18 months and trying to be a public company. And in that journey, how much of our investment is going to go for long-term decisions or long-term outcomes, and how much is going to go for short-term, in the bag today outcomes. And you got to balance it, right? So it's easy to swing one way and think very short-term on what you want to transact on now. But I do think you miss on being able to continue to innovate in the future. So striking that balance and making sure you can get your board on board with that has been important in balancing both.
Ethan, what has changed?
Well, for us, it's actually a very different game because we were in our worst during COVID time when the interest rate was at zero, right? So right now, we actually become one of the fastest growing company in the market, at least from the Asia Pacific perspective. We are hitting profit, and it's the only thing you learn throughout that journey is just being more disciplined, right? Every single dollar counts. Right, your board will chase you, how you spend the money. And I think that's the biggest change in the last few years. And then as an individual, I think I'm just become more zen. I mean, that's an Asian term that I will use, become more zen in a way
Relaxed,
that
yeah.
you do things, you become more relaxed in a way that you do 120% effort to the things that you can change and make effort. Mm-hmm. And you stop worrying things that you cannot change.
That's right.
You stop worrying about all the environment. Then you actually become more focused and also more relaxed at the same time.
That's very important.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think like every crisis, the world is going to end, you're never going to raise money again. Like, I guess we just learned to focus on our day-to-day, focus on the execution with our team and try to not to get that distracted, because if you have a clear strategy and adapted, it should be okay. But again, every year that there is a crisis, the world is going to end. We have been there during COVID as well. All companies were going to die and well,
That was a
here we are,
challenge.
right?
COVID was a challenge for everyone, though.
Yeah.
So it was like a black swan event for everyone. Saleh, looking at all these businesses and the whole portfolio, between your decisions earlier and what you look at today, what has changed?
Wow. To be frank, in terms of the business model, like when I say R, I'm referring to the Vision Fund and to Safanad's business model. Not much has changed, right? We've always spelled out the right strategy and the right approach, and we haven't had to change our rule book because in both platforms, we haven't been out to make a quick buck, so to speak, right? To use a bit of colloquialism. We've been very patient in the way we build our business. So at Safanad, for example, Kamal Bahamdan, the founder, had the foresight back in 2009 to start providing the first dollar to the businesses that we still own to this day.
Okay.
Right? So that's being patient, and that would have seen most of those businesses through a few cycles.
So you do not think of exiting once you're starting?
No, if you believe in the businesses and you believe in the founders, like we do in these three people, right? You know that your business is in the right hands, and you know that you've made the right decisions as to what businesses, what sectors to be involved in. So from that point of view, I don't think a lot has changed, right? We've stayed the course. And because our business models were not built on short-term gains, although the rules of that game have changed a lot, we haven't had to change our playbook, right? There are other platforms that rely on leverage, that rely on cutting costs for operational efficiencies and whatnot. For them, the game has changed a lot, right? But if you have the right business and if you have the right investors and you have the trust with your investor base and you have the trust with your portfolio companies, you don't really have, you can really see out the cycles. It's not an issue, you know? It sounds quite arrogant, but that's the reality. We don't feel the pressure, you know, to have to readjust our models. But it's important that you put in the foundations to allow for that continuity and to allow for that long-term gain.
I mean, I had like at least 3 more questions, but we're out of time. So thank you, Saleh, Rebecca, Ethan, and Mo for joining me on this.
Thank you so much.
I can ask you later for TV.